The rain didn't fall. It hammered. Thick, relentless sheets poured from the sky like punishment. Sidewalks turned to rivers, bus stops to puddles, and umbrellas flipped inside out like broken wings. Ava Ramirez had no umbrella, just a torn hoodie, a duffel bag filled with bleach-scented rags, and shoes that had given up being waterproof 6 months ago. She walked fast, head down, jaw clenched. Another double shift at the cleaning agency, the third this week. Her fingers were raw from scrubbing mold out of luxury apartments she'd never afford to live in. Her back ached, her stomach growled, and her phone battery was dead. Again. Payday was still 5 days away. And then she saw it. At first it didn't register, just another lump on the sidewalk. But the brown leather glint caught her eye under the streetlight. She slowed, took 2 steps back, and stared. It was a wallet. No one was around. The street was half flooded, empty of life except for the growl of distant traffic and the tap-tap of rain against steel. She glanced left, right. Nothing but a flickering parking meter and a trash bin coughing out soggy flyers. Ava crouched and picked it up. It was thick, heavy. The leather was soft, real. Not fake, market knockoff like hers. She opened it carefully with trembling fingers. Cash. A thick stack of crisp bills. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Her throat went dry. There were credit cards too, at least 4. Platinum, black, names embossed in gold. And then she saw the ID. Jonathan Mercer. Age 49. Address, Upper East Side, New York. There was a photo of a man in a suit, salt and pepper hair, sharp jaw, dead serious expression. The kind of man who didn't lose wallets. The kind of man who'd never crossed paths with someone like her. Ava stared at the photo like it might blink. Mercer. That name. Why does it sound familiar? She didn't know why it mattered. Probably just some finance guy, maybe a corporate lawyer, maybe one of those cold men who always talked about synergy and forgot their assistants' birthdays. She looked back at the cash. This money. It could cover rent, groceries, that asthma inhaler she'd been rationing for weeks. It could buy new shoes, a laptop that didn't freeze every time she opened 2 tabs. Hell, maybe even a short online course. A way back to school, a way forward, no one would know. She could toss the wallet, keep the cash, use the cards once for groceries and trash them. It wouldn't make her a bad person. It'd make her smart. Survival wasn't sin, it was necessity. And yet, a cold, familiar whisper rose inside her, her mother's voice. You don't steal what was never yours, even if the world already stole from you. Ava let out a slow breath, looked up at the sky. The rain hadn't stopped. If anything, it was coming down harder now, soaking her hoodie, her hair, her spirit. She stood there frozen, caught between desperation and decency. And then, with shaking hands, she zipped the wallet into her duffel bag, not to keep it, but to return it. She found a dry spot under an awning and pulled out her cracked phone. No battery, of course. She cursed under her breath, then walked 3 blocks to the corner diner, dripping all the way. Inside, she begged the waitress to let her borrow the phone charger behind the counter. The woman gave her a wary look, then nodded. 15 minutes later, with 4% battery, she Googled him. Jonathan Mercer. It took one search. Chief Executive Officer of Mercer Innovations. Founder of an international logistics empire. Featured in Forbes. Lives in a glass tower in the Upper East Side. Worth over $700 million. Ava blinked at the screen. She had just touched more money in his wallet than she'd see in 5 years. She scribbled the business address from his LinkedIn profile onto a napkin, returned the charger, and stepped back into the storm. She didn't know why her heart was beating so fast, or why her chest felt tight. It wasn't guilt or nerves. It was something else. Something buried. Something she didn't have a name for yet. All she knew was this. Tomorrow she'd show up, she'd return it, she'd do the right thing, even if no one ever saw her, even if he didn't care, even if it changed nothing, because sometimes the only thing poor people get to keep is their dignity, and she wasn't ready to lose that too. The next morning, Manhattan glistened with leftover rain and fresh denial. Streets bustled, horns blared, People in suits rushed past like they were late for something more important than life itself. Ava stood at the base of a towering glass skyscraper, heart pounding beneath her thrift store coat. Mercer Innovations. 45 stories of polished steel, reflective panels, and untouchable ambition. The kind of building where people didn't walk in unless they belonged, or made someone rich. She didn't belong, and she definitely didn't make anyone rich. Still, she took a breath, squared her shoulders, and walked through the revolving doors. Inside was another world. Marble floors, scent of eucalyptus from unseen diffusers, a front desk staffed by a woman whose lipstick matched the company logo. No chaos, no mess, just cold, calculated order. Ava approached the desk, clutching the wallet in both hands like it might bite her. The receptionist raised an eyebrow without smiling. Yes? Ava cleared her throat. Hi, I found a wallet last night. Belongs to Mr. Jonathan Mercer. The woman blinked, unimpressed. And? I came to return it. Pause. You're not on the appointment list. No, I'm not here for a meeting. I just wanted to give this back, that's all. The woman reached out, took the wallet, and gave it a quick once-over. Then she sighed as if kindness was a quota she had already met today. I'll let his executive assistant know. You can leave it here. Ava hesitated. Can you make sure he actually gets it? The receptionist gave her a stare sharp enough to draw blood. We don't steal, sweetheart. You can go. Ava nodded, embarrassed. She turned to leave, steps already heavy from the coldness, when a door behind the reception desk suddenly opened, and he walked out. Jonathan Mercer. In person, he was even sharper than his photo. Gray-tailored suit, no tie, crisp white shirt. His hair was a little more salt than pepper now, but his presence made up for it. He didn't walk. He moved like someone who expected the world to part for him. He was mid-conversation with a man in glasses, voice low and controlled. Then his eyes swept across the lobby, quick, instinctive, and he saw her. He stopped walking. His voice cut mid-sentence. His eyes, cool and unreadable, locked onto hers. Something in his expression faltered. For just a second, the man next to him looked confused. Jonathan? But Jonathan didn't answer. He just stared. Ava stood frozen, unsure whether to look away or hold his gaze. He blinked once, slowly, then looked down at the wallet in the receptionist's hand. Where did that come from? He asked, voice steady but strange. The receptionist straightened up. This young woman returned it. She said she found it on the street. Jonathan's eyes returned to Ava, this time slower, sharper, like he was trying to remember something, or someone. He took a step forward. You returned it? Ava swallowed. Yes. He studied her. Not like most rich people studied poor ones, judging the shoes, the split ends, the hunger. His stare wasn't rude. It was confused, intense. You found it where? On 45th and Lexington, near the bus stop, last night, in the rain. Another pause. Longer. I don't go that way home, he said quietly. I must have dropped it near the car. Maybe, Ava said. I just wanted to return it. Jonathan nodded slowly. Most people wouldn't. I'm not most people. That made something flicker in his eyes. Not amusement, not admiration. Something more complicated. The receptionist chimed in, trying to regain control. Mr. Mercer, I'll place the wallet in your office. No, he interrupted. I'll take it. He reached out, took the wallet, and held it in both hands for a moment, then looked at her again. What's your name? Ava. Ava Ramirez. The name seemed to echo. He didn't react immediately, but something in his jaw tightened. Do you have somewhere to be? Ava hesitated. I was going to head home. Can I offer you a ride? She blinked. What? I'd like to thank you properly. At least let me drive you. I didn't return it for a reward. He gave a slow nod. Then accept it as respect. That caught her off guard. Respect? From someone like him? She hesitated again, but something deeper than curiosity made her say, okay. 15 minutes later, they sat in the back of a black town car. Leather seats, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. He didn't talk much, just watched the rain blur against the window. She caught him glancing at her reflection in the glass. Not in a creepy way, not like a man looks at a stranger, but like he was trying to place a memory he couldn't name. And she sat there, pretending not to notice. But something had changed in the air, something that didn't belong to a random lost wallet, something that felt older than yesterday. Ava didn't expect to hear from him again. She figured the ride home was his version of a rich man's thank you, a performative gesture to keep his conscience tidy, one he'd forget by the next board meeting. She didn't even tell her mom about the visit. What was there to say? Hey, I returned a billionaire's wallet and he gave me a polite car ride. So when her phone rang the next morning, an unknown number flashing on the cracked screen, she almost ignored it. Almost. Hello, she answered cautiously. Miss Ramirez? Came a smooth voice. It wasn't Jonathan, but it carried the weight of someone who worked close to power. Mr. Mercer asked me to call and see if you're available for a follow-up meeting today. Ava blinked. A meeting? Yes, in person. He said he appreciated your integrity and would like to thank you properly. Lunch or coffee, whichever you prefer. Her gut twisted. She hadn't expected this, not again. Still, something in her, the part that was more curious than cautious, answered, Sure, I guess. 2 hours later, Ava sat on the outdoor patio of a secluded midtown restaurant she couldn't even pronounce the name of. The tablecloth was actual linen. The menu didn't have prices, and the waiter didn't hide his confusion when she asked for water. Tap, not sparkling. Then Jonathan Mercer arrived. He wore a slate gray overcoat, no tie, and that same unreadable expression. But today, something in his eyes looked unsettled. Thank you for coming, he said as he took the seat across from her. She shrugged. Your assistant made it sound like I didn't have much of a choice. That made a faint curve form on his lips, almost a smile. Almost. I just wanted to speak again, he said, then paused. You reminded me of someone. I couldn't place it yesterday. Someone you know, Ava asked. Jonathan studied her. Knew. That one syllable carried weight. He looked away briefly, as if recalibrating. Then he asked, Where did you grow up? The question caught her off guard. Queens, why? Your parents still there? My mom is. My dad, I never met him. Another pause. Jonathan's voice dropped lower. Who raised you? My mom, she replied. Alone. He stared at her hands resting on the table. Your mother's name? She hesitated. Elena. This time the reaction wasn't subtle. His face stiffened. His shoulders tensed. Elena Ramirez? He asked, barely audible. Yes. Her voice was cautious now, heart starting to pound. Why? Jonathan leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on her like she was a ghost he never expected to see in daylight. I knew her, a long time ago. Ava's throat went dry. When? She asked, voice thin. Before Mercer Innovations. Before all of this. He gestured vaguely at the world around him. We were close, but we lost contact. Ava didn't know what to say. Her mind raced, connecting threads she didn't even know were loose. Jonathan looked shaken, more shaken than a wallet would ever justify. And you never saw her again? She asked. He shook his head slowly. Number I tried once, years later, but she was gone. I assumed she moved on, built a life. I never knew she had a child. Ava swallowed. Her fingers curled under the edge of the table. He stared at her again, not with pity, not with guilt, with something heavier, something real. She wanted to ask a million questions, but the silence between them did all the speaking, and somewhere deep inside her, a quiet suspicion began to bloom like a storm cloud forming over still water. The subway ride home felt like floating underwater. Ava barely registered the screech of metal on metal, the hum of advertisements overhead, or the sharp perfume of the woman sitting beside her. Her thoughts spun too fast, too loud. He knew Mom, not in passing, not distantly, personally. She played it cool during lunch, barely. But inside, something had cracked open. The way Jonathan had said her mother's name, the way he looked at her like she was someone he remembered from another lifetime. It wasn't normal. It wasn't polite interest. It was recognition, and that made it dangerous. When she got home to their cramped apartment, her mother was folding laundry on the couch, hair tied back, a tired sitcom playing in the background. "You're home early," Elena said without looking up. "Cleaning job got canceled," Ava lied quickly. "The building had plumbing issues." Her mother nodded, half listening. "Lucky break." Ava hung her jacket, kicked off her shoes, and stood in the hallway longer than necessary, watching, measuring. Then she took a seat across from her. "I saw someone today." That got Elena's attention. Ava tried to sound casual. "Jonathan Mercer, the wallet guy. He wanted to meet again. Said he knew you." The color drained from Elena's face. "What?" she asked, voice low. "He said he knew you. From before." Silence. Elena's hands stilled. A folded towel remained untouched. She didn't look at Ava, just stared straight ahead, her body going unnaturally still. Ava leaned forward. "Did you know him?" Her mother blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "It was a long time ago. Mom, I don't want to talk about it." "Too bad. I already talked to him." Now Elena turned to her. "What did he say?" "That you were close, that you disappeared, that he never knew you had a daughter." A pause. "Did he ask for proof?" Ava narrowed her eyes. "What kind of proof?" But Elena stood, gathering the last of the laundry like it was a shield. "Drop it, Ava." "Mom, drop it." The sharpness in her voice filled the room like broken glass. Ava sat back, stunned. Her mother never shouted. "I made my choices," Elena said, voice shaking. "I did what I thought was best." "For who?" Ava asked, softer now. But her mother didn't answer. She just walked down the hall and closed her bedroom door behind her with a soft, final click. Ava didn't push. Not that night. Instead, she made herself tea with the last of the loose leaves, stared out the window at the glow of the bodega sign across the street, and listened to the silence behind her mother's door. But silence only made her curiosity louder. Around midnight, when the light under the bedroom door disappeared, Ava crept down the hall. She'd never gone through her mother's things before. There was always a line, unspoken but respected. Tonight she crossed it. She opened the drawer of her mother's old desk. It creaked in protest. Bills, expired coupons, a broken wristwatch, a stack of cards tied with a rubber band. And at the very bottom, wedged beneath a faded utility bill, was a small envelope, yellowed at the edges. She pulled it out. Inside was a photo. Ava's heart stopped. It was her mother, maybe 22, 23, standing beside a younger Jonathan Mercer. He wasn't in a suit. He wore a college hoodie, a crooked smile, an arm slung around her shoulders like it belonged there. They looked happy. And the terrifying part? Ava could see herself in both of them. Her mother's eyes, Jonathan's jawline, her own nose caught in the middle like a tie between two truths. On the back of the photo, in faded blue ink, were three words: Elena and Jay, 1996. Ava sat there in the dark, the photo trembling in her hand. Her mother hadn't just known Jonathan Mercer. She'd loved him, and for 21 years, Ava had lived without knowing the truth about her own blood. Now, the question wasn't if Jonathan Mercer was her father, it was why no one had told her, and what she was supposed to do now that she knew. The morning came slowly, dragging light across the floor, like it wasn't sure if it was welcome. Ava hadn't slept. The photo sat on her desk like a loaded weapon, the faded smiles of two people she couldn't reconcile staring up at her all night. She heard her mother's door creak open. Cabinets clicked. Water ran. The scent of instant coffee filled the apartment. Ava stood in the hallway, the photo in her hand. "Elena," she said, intentionally using her first name. Her mother looked up from the sink, cup halfway to her mouth. One look at the photo and she froze. "You went through my things," she said softly. "You lied," Ava replied. Elena closed her eyes, set the mug down with trembling fingers, and exhaled. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you. That's not better." "I know." Ava stepped closer. Her voice wavered between fury and heartbreak. "So that man, the CEO, the one with an office in the sky, and drivers and assistants, and a face in Forbes, that man is my father?" Elena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Why didn't you tell me? Ava whispered. Her mother leaned against the counter, shoulders sinking like sandbags tied to her spine. I was 21, working night shifts at a library. He was brilliant, charming, ambitious in a way I'd never seen before. We met at a university seminar. He was lightning. And then he got an offer, a startup gig out west. Said he needed to leave in a week, promised he'd come back for me. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after he left. Ava's mouth tightened. Why didn't you call him? I did. The number was disconnected. His email bounced back, and I didn't have his address. He was gone, Ava. Just gone. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. And I was terrified. Alone. My parents disowned me when they found out. I couldn't afford to chase a ghost. I had you. That's all I could focus on. Ava's throat ached, her voice barely coming out. He didn't even know? No, her mother's voice cracked. He never knew. Ava turned away, the photo curling slightly in her hand. It all made sense now. The look Jonathan gave her, the hesitation in his voice, the questions. He'd seen something in her because he'd already met it once, 20 years ago, in the face of a girl named Elena. Ava sat on the couch and stared at the floor. Her whole identity felt fractured, like someone had quietly rewritten her origin story and forgot to tell her. Elena moved to sit beside her, but stopped halfway. I didn't keep it from you out of shame, she said. I kept it from you because I didn't want you to think he abandoned you. I didn't want you to hate a man who never had the chance to choose. Ava's voice came out low. Maybe I deserved the truth anyway. They sat in silence, the room thick with things unsaid. Finally, Ava stood. He wants to see me again. Elena stiffened. He does? He said I reminded him of someone. I think he's starting to put the pieces together. Her mother nodded slowly. He's not a bad man, just ambitious. He chased the world and in doing so, left parts of it behind. I was one of those parts. I know. Ava didn't shout. She didn't slam doors. But as she walked back to her room, she felt a new fire rising in her chest. Because Jonathan Mercer wasn't just a man she returned a wallet to. He was her father, and she was going to decide what that meant, on her own terms. Ava didn't answer his messages, not the first, not the second, not the fifth. He'd left a voicemail on the second day. Ava, I hope you're well. I'd like to see you again. There's something important I want to talk to you about. Please call me back. She didn't. He sent a follow-up email, polite, professional, distant enough to be deniable, but laced with an urgency she couldn't unhear. I understand if this is overwhelming. I'd still like to meet again. My assistant can schedule a time that works for you. No pressure. It felt like pressure anyway. She stared at the screen for 10 minutes before closing her laptop without replying. Days passed. Her world split itself into two lives that no longer fit together. By day, she scrubbed counters at the diner. Her uniform clung to her back with the weight of grease and sweat. Customers barely looked at her face when they ordered. It was familiar, comfortable even, being invisible. But by night, when the lights were off and silence crept into the corners of the apartment, her mind wandered to him, to Jonathan, to the photo, to that look he gave her. Not pity, not curiosity, recognition. And that was what haunted her most. Elena tried not to bring him up, but it was clear she was waiting. Every glance, every hesitant sentence, a silent plea for Ava to talk. Ava didn't. She didn't know how, because the truth wasn't simple. She was angry, furious that her mother had withheld this truth, furious that Jonathan got to live 2 decades in penthouses and polished suits while she and her mom rationed shampoo. But under the fury, there was something worse. Curiosity, because for the first time in her life, Ava had a name to attach to the empty space in her story, a face, a voice, and now he was reaching out, again and again. The 6th message came by courier, a handwritten letter, sealed in an envelope with a gold-trimmed card inside. No legal language, no threats, no offers of money, just this. Ava, I want to understand who you are, and I want you to understand who I was before I became this man. If you give me a few minutes of your time, I'll be honest. No suits, No boardrooms. Just me. It was too careful to be manipulative, too raw to be strategic, and that made it worse, because she couldn't tell if she was being invited into a life she had been robbed of, or if she was being baited. She sat with the letter in her lap, eyes on the coffee table, heart racing like she was standing on the edge of two cliffs, one labeled father, the other stranger. She folded the note and tucked it back in the envelope. Did she want a father, or did she want to show him what it meant to lose something you never even knew you had? That night, Ava wandered the streets longer than usual, past the bridge, past the all-night laundromat, past the streetlight that always flickered like it was trying to make up its mind. She paused outside a closed storefront, her reflection staring back from the darkened glass. Two Avas, the one who returned the wallet out of principle, and the one who now carried the weight of a last name she never asked for. Torn, tired, but not done. She said yes, not out loud, not in the warmth of her voice, because there was none, but in a short, direct message to his assistant. I'll meet him. One time. No cameras. No press. The reply came within the hour, confirming a reservation at a quiet restaurant tucked away on the edge of Central Park. No paparazzi, no table in the middle of the room, just shadows, old wood, and candlelight. Ava wore black, not a dress. Black jeans, black turtleneck, black jacket, a quiet kind of armor. She didn't do it to look mysterious. She did it to feel like she had some control. When she walked in, he was already there. Jonathan Mercer, the man who once built empires while her mother built secondhand cribs. But tonight he looked smaller, not physically, just less bulletproof. He stood when he saw her. No handshake, no hug, just a simple nod. Thank you for coming, he said. Ava took her seat. I wasn't sure I would. He didn't smile. I wasn't sure you should. The waiter arrived and they ordered quickly. Rosemary chicken for her, some complicated fish for him. She barely remembered the details. Her mind was too full of questions. He didn't launch into a speech. He waited. And then quietly he began. I didn't run away, he said. Not on purpose. Ava said nothing. I got an opportunity I didn't expect. It felt like lightning in a bottle, something I had to chase. I told myself I'd come back, that I'd fix everything after the business took off. He paused, fingers tracing the edge of his water glass. But time got faster, and I got greedy. Success does that. It makes you feel like you're owed the future. Were you? She asked flatly. No, he said without hesitation. But I thought I was. And by the time I realized what I'd left behind, I couldn't find her. I tried, Ava. I swear to you. I looked, but Elena had vanished. Or maybe I was just too late. The waiter arrived with their plates, breaking the moment. Jonathan thanked him quietly and waited until he left to continue. I never knew you existed. Not until I saw you. Ava looked up. And then? He gave a soft exhale. Something in your eyes. The way you carried yourself. It was like someone pressed rewind on my life and showed me the version I missed. Silence settled between them like fog. You're not here for a father, he said gently. I don't even know what that means, as she replied. That's fair. He took a bite, chewed, then set his fork down. I'm not trying to replace what's already gone. I'm not here to apologize and expect a hug. I just want to be honest. For once. Ava studied him. Everything about him was clean. Pressed shirt, manicured hands, posture of a man used to winning. But his voice? It was cracked, not broken, just weathered. Why me? She asked. What do you mean? Why reach out now? You could have just said thank you and disappeared again. He looked her dead in the eye. Because if I walked away twice, I wouldn't forgive myself a third time. That silenced her, and for the first time since they sat down, something shifted. Not trust, not warmth, but the sense that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't manipulation. It was a man trying, clumsily, to meet a ghost he hadn't earned the right to see in daylight. Ava didn't forgive him, not yet, but she didn't leave either. And when dessert came, and he offered to walk her to the curb, she didn't say no. She just stood quietly beside him, staring out at the city that had kept them apart for 21 years, and wondered what it meant that he felt like a stranger, with familiar eyes. I want proof. The words left Ava's mouth like stone dropped in still water, quiet but heavy. Jonathan didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting it all along. Of course, he said. Whatever you need. A week later, they sat across from each other again, but this time in a sterile office with white walls, clinical lighting, and a nurse who avoided eye contact. Swabs, signatures, sealed envelopes. Nothing personal, nothing emotional, just science. Results take 5 business days, the technician said before disappearing through a steel door. Ava rose first. I'll let you know when I get them. Jonathan stood as well. I'd like to be there when you open them. She didn't respond, just left. 5 days is nothing, until you're waiting for the truth. Ava couldn't sit still, couldn't focus, couldn't breathe without thinking of what that envelope would say. The possibility of being someone's daughter after 2 decades of not being anyone's was suffocating. So instead of waiting, she wandered. She didn't mean to follow him, not exactly. It started with a simple Google search, then a street address. Then, one day after her shift, she took the long subway ride uptown, just to look. Jonathan Mercer's world wasn't behind walls. It was behind silence. The mansion sat 3 stories high, brick and steel and glass, surrounded by trees that had probably been imported from somewhere fancier. A private driver waited in a black car out front. Security cameras tracked every breeze. She didn't walk up. She didn't knock. She just watched. A tall woman emerged from the front door, elegant, sharp-cheeked. Not beautiful in a soft way, beautiful in a sculpted, practiced way. She kissed Jonathan on the cheek, passed him a folder, then walked back inside. Then came a girl, maybe 16, long, dark curls, perfect posture, school uniform. She ran to Jonathan, hugged him tight. Ava's heart twisted. She wasn't jealous. Not exactly. But something inside her caved in. The ache of what if, of could have been, of birthday parties and scraped knees and someone showing up at parent-teacher night. She wasn't angry at the girl. She was angry at fate, at time, at how easily people can build full, shining lives while others fight just to keep the lights on. She felt like a ghost, like she was haunting someone else's life. She left before they saw her, took a different train home, sat near the window and stared at the reflection of a girl she barely recognized anymore. Was she hoping the DNA test would say yes, or did she secretly hope it said no, so she could slam the door and walk away clean? She didn't know. 2 days later, the envelope arrived. White, thin, unassuming. Ava didn't open it. Not yet. She placed it on the kitchen table and stared at it like it might open itself. Elena noticed it when she walked in. You got it, she said softly. Ava nodded. Elena sat beside her. Do you want me to be here when you open it? No. You sure? Yeah. Her mother placed a gentle hand on hers anyway. Whatever it says, it doesn't change who raised you. Ava blinked back something sharp. I know, she whispered, but it might change who I become. The envelope still sat unopened on her dresser when the call came. Ava was folding laundry in silence, her mom dozing on the couch when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Miss Ramirez, a woman's voice asked, professional but brittle. This is Margaret, Mr. Mercer's assistant. I'm calling from Mount Sinai. Ava's heart stilled. What happened? He collapsed in the boardroom this morning. A cardiac episode. He's stable but sedated. The doctors are watching him closely. A beat of silence passed. Then Margaret said, softer this time, he asked for you. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and late prayers. She moved through sterile corridors and borrowed courage, each step heavier than the last. When the nurse led her into room 314, it took everything in her not to cry. Jonathan Mercer looked nothing like the man in Forbes. He lay still in the hospital bed, pale against white sheets, machines whispering around him. A heart monitor beeped steadily, as if reminding her he was still holding on, but barely. Margaret sat in the corner chair. She stood when Ava entered and pressed a sealed envelope into her hand. "He wrote it 2 nights ago," she said. "Said he had a feeling he wouldn't get to say it all in person." Ava's fingers trembled around the paper. It had her name on it. Just 5 letters. In ink that looked deliberate, careful. "He hasn't woken up since the episode," Margaret added, "but I know he wanted you to have that." "Thank you," Ava whispered. Margaret nodded once, then quietly left the room. Ava sat beside him, watched the rise and fall of his chest, memorized the sound of the monitor, studied the face that had given her half of hers. He looked peaceful, like a man who'd finally stopped running. She didn't speak, didn't know what to say to someone who'd just become real, and was already slipping away. After a while she stood, slipped the envelope into her coat pocket, and kissed him on the forehead, like she wasn't sure she'd get the chance again. She didn't open the letter in the hospital. She walked 3 blocks, took the train home, sat on the floor of her bedroom, and stared at it until the sun went down. Then with slow fingers, she tore it open. "Ava, I don't know if you'll ever read this, or if I'll be brave enough to give it to you in person. But if you're holding this, then maybe life gave me a second chance after all. I won't waste words with excuses. I left. I didn't come back. And the reasons don't matter as much as the damage did. I never knew you existed, and I'll carry that regret until my last breath. But from the moment I saw you, something inside me shifted. Not because I recognized your mother's eyes, but because I recognized the strength in your silence, the way you stood your ground. I've spent years surrounded by power, but nothing made me feel smaller than standing in front of you. I missed your first steps, your first words. I wasn't there for your birthdays, your heartbreaks, your graduations, and I can't buy that time back. I wouldn't dare try. But if there's a sliver of space in your life, I'd like to earn a corner of it. Not as a father, not yet, but maybe as a man who's finally ready to show up. Whatever you decide, know this. You were never unwanted. You were just unknown. And now that I know, I want to begin." Jonathan Ava held the letter to her chest and cried for everything, for what could have been, for what might still be, and for the man who finally said all the right words, after running out of time to say them. The envelope was still sealed when Ava returned from the hospital. She didn't rush. She didn't even look at it for hours. She made tea, folded laundry, helped her mom organize the kitchen drawers, did everything except face the truth sitting on her dresser like a quiet final word. But that night, when the apartment was asleep and the city had finally hushed beneath the window, she opened it. 1 page, 1 sentence. Probability of parentage, 99.997%. Jonathan Mercer is the biological father. No fanfare, no life-altering music in the background, just the quiet confirmation that what her heart already suspected was real. Jonathan Mercer was her father, by blood, by name, by a truth 2 decades too late. She didn't tell her mom right away, didn't text anyone, just folded the paper and tucked it into the same envelope as his letter. The next day, she went back to Mount Sinai. He was still unconscious. Machines still beeped. She sat beside him and whispered, "I know. And it doesn't change the past, but I'm choosing what comes next." 2 weeks later, Jonathan Mercer woke up. The doctors called it a miracle, a slow, groggy miracle, but a miracle nonetheless. Ava didn't visit that day. She didn't run into his arms. She didn't cry. She got to work. The building had been abandoned for years, peeling paint, boarded windows, weeds curling through cracked concrete. But Ava remembered it, the old rec center on 129th. She'd walked past it as a kid 100 times, back when her mother used to sigh and say, "If I ever win the lottery, I'm turning that place into a real community center. Kids need more than homework. They need hope." Elena never won the lottery, but Ava had something else now, a name. She didn't want Jonathan's money. She never asked. But when his legal team reached out, offering a settlement, an inheritance claim, anything she wanted, Ava made one request: "Help me fix a building. Not for me, for them." She didn't want to be famous. She didn't want press releases or ribbon cuttings. She just wanted the doors open. 6 months later, the center reopened. Fresh paint, Bright walls, art supplies, a reading corner, free Wi-Fi, mental health counselors twice a week, an open stage for spoken word, a fridge stocked with donated groceries for families in need. Kids poured in. Teenagers came to breathe. Mothers came to rest. Fathers came to try. On the back wall of the main hallway, painted in bold brush strokes, were the words, Mercer House. Beneath it, in smaller font, not a tribute, a beginning. Jonathan visited once, quietly. He stood in the hallway alone, watching a group of kids draw superheroes on a giant chalkboard wall. Ava didn't run to him. She didn't cry, but she walked up beside him, hands in her coat pockets, staring ahead. He glanced down at her. "You did all this?" She shook her head. "We did." He nodded slowly. "Why use my name?" She paused. "Because I didn't want it to end with you." A beat passed. He smiled. Not the CEO smile, not the polished one from magazine covers. Something softer. "You're more like her than you know." Ava turned to him. "I'm more like me than either of you." He laughed quietly. "Good. The world needs more of you." They didn't hug. They didn't pose for photos. They just stood side by side. Two people not erasing the past, but finally writing their own future on top of it. Ava didn't need a father. She became the kind of woman a father would be proud of anyway. And Jonathan? He didn't get a second chance at time, but he got something better, a chance to be useful to someone other than himself. Because blood doesn't lie, but it doesn't have to define you either.